Hello, my name is James Spivey, and this is my wife Jenna. And I have told this story, I guess several times at the Heartland Center, and Jenna was always present. She was the director there. And because people like to hear about Baba stories and they come there and tell their Baba stories.
Yeah. I'm just going to sit down.
Okay. Well, she's going to help keep me
on track.
On track. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I was born in 1949 in Central Florida, and it's a very rural area. It's not anything like today's Florida. This was well before Disney and company. It was a beautiful paradise physically. There's a lot of redneck lifestyle. There was the Ku Klux Klan in abundance, and
I think one of the things you've said in the past was that the Klan was really the law of the land.
yes,
At the time.
yes,
That was the law enforcement.
yeah, it was. There was one constable for the county, and so people had their own. The Klan was the enforcer. I would never say, I don't want to say anything much good. I don't want to say anything good about the Klan. So,
Yet they did help you.
yet they did help in a lot of ways. There were chain gangs back then, and people would escape. And knowing our family, and there was no man in the house. It was my mother, my brother, and I. They would stage someone out front and someone out back, with their guns, and just to protect us. They would put food in our refrigerator when we weren't at home. So would the blacks. We had black friends that would leave off food for us. We were poor.
Your father died.
My father died when I was free, 3 years old. My father died and I was free, you might say, because he was as redneck as anybody. And my mom decided not to have another man raise her children at any expense, and it was tough on her. She would pack fruit in season in label vegetable crates when she could get to work, and when that wasn't working, she was a prostitute. So that's what I grew up with at a very young age. So
When you were 5?
yeah, when I became 5 years old, I wanted to know about Frank Spivey, who I thought was my father, and I would ask people that knew him in the neighborhood, what was he like? What was my father like? Was my question actually, and they couldn't tell me. They'd choke up. They would not be real all of a sudden, and I had after enough of this, being lied to, as obviously I was being lied to, I would experiment a little bit with questions and ask them a question that they could right then answer honestly. Their whole demeanor would change, and I go, so what is this?
The scientist. Behavioral scientist.
Yeah, I was doing some psychology at a very young age, but I think any kid knows when they're being lied to. Let's see, where to go?
Well, you would go out in the woods.
I was, so my mom being a prostitute, you know, it had to have been a very unearthing, I didn't know what that was about. I didn't know what was going on. It was just probably just strange to me, but not good. I knew that much. And that with people lying to me about who my father was, I wanted somebody to tell me the truth about that. I wanted to hear the truth. I would go out in the woods, which I enjoyed so much, nature, and I would just verbally ask someone something for help. I didn't know if I was asking Jesus, God, or Santa Claus, you know. I was just asking. And I was looking for truth because it wasn't happening in my life. And I started receiving some feelings in my heart. I mean, it was answers. I started receiving answers in the form of not specific numbers or names or anything, but not to worry now. Don't worry about this now. You don't have to worry about this now. I got this. And if that had come from a person there, someone I knew, it wouldn't mean anything. But this came directly into my heart of knowledge, my heart of knowledge, say. So I continued, and that would suit me. That would make me feel good. It would resolve any bad feelings. And I would go back later and several times, a lot of times, go back and hope for more conversation with this entity, which I yet still did not know at the time who this was, what kind of label to put on these answers. I did, so this, you know, I couldn't, this was real. I had hooked on to something that was real, that was truth. So I had learned that this communication I was having was so real that I could not just go out into the woods one more time and ask anything and receive anything if I wasn't really sincere about what I was asking, or sincere of my concern at that time.
So it had to be a heart to heart.
It had to come from my heart, not my brain. It would be nothing if I cheapened it with just wanting to go out there and come back with. It wasn't going to happen. But every time I was really worried about something that was going on in the house or whatever, or the ugliness that a kid can experience in a redneck area, it would be there. The answers would be there. And the answers again came straight to the heart. I started asking, who am I talking to here? Who is doing this for me? And that answer came pretty clear. Don't worry about this now. This is not the time for you to know. Just don't worry. I wanted to know why things are the way they are, why things are the way I see them, as the anger, the prejudices, and that was for a while, that was my main question. I wanted to know, why is there hatred? I would like get my business done. I would ask the question, and when I received the answer, when I was sincere, I would still try to tag on at the end. Oh, by the way, who are you? And lo and behold, my brother and my mom went to town one day, and I usually
You were 7?
Yeah, I was 7.
So it was 1956.
Yeah, and I like to go into town, riding in a car, and going to town, coming back. But for some reason, I chose to stay home. I wanted to stay home that day, and so I'm watching television. We got into television in '56, and I'm watching television, and it was the Dave Garroway show, and he had announced that when we come back, we're going to interview this man who says he's God. Wow, this excited me greatly. And I remember even before that happened, I was laying on the floor, the linoleum rug in the living room, rolling over to one side, cooling that side of my body. It was a hot day. And then rolling over and just being there. But when Baba came on the television, it wasn't hot anymore. There wasn't the outside. There wasn't sounds from the outside, birds or anything. There was no outside. There was no inside. There was just the television screen and me. And there was Baba with a tall, structured, greatly good structured man standing next to him. Obviously, later on I found out it was Erich. And he was asked my question. I felt it was my question that I wanted the answer to. Now, at 7 years old, most kids can read pretty well these days, but not me. We didn't have books in the house, and it wasn't read to, and my reading was very poor. And this had subcaptions on it, and I read it perfectly. I understood it perfectly. And I knew, and I saw his name, and I said his name. And I knew right then that this is the source that I had been talking to. And it was over with. It was...
The question. The question.
Oh, the question was, why is there so much pain and suffering on earth? And the end, this is not verbatim, it was, you see, the question had many more words, it was much more involved, and so was the answer. But it was the exact same thing. And I understood it. And at that time, I probably wouldn't have understood exactly what the question and answer. But I got it. It was probably the first time I had ever read anything near that complicated and understood it completely. As long as pleasures are pursued through selfish means, that there will always be pain and suffering. And again, that's not exactly the way Ivy Deuce asked the question, but that was the question.
Yeah, as long as there's greed and selfishness, something along those lines.
Yeah.
That was Baba's answer.
So it was what I started fearing the fact that Baba was not, that this was going to end. And it went to break or something. And so I didn't want anything else to be on the television screen after I saw Baba and just went through this. So I got my hand up on the knob. I was ready to turn it off if anything else came on. Back then it wasn't just every second something. You know, there were lapses and seconds, minutes, and hours back then. I got right up to it, and what came on was the network signal test pattern or something. Test pattern. Oh, okay. This is better than anything else, you know. But I still had my hand right on. I was right up at the screen. I didn't want anything else to be on it. And then it went to uh, snow, the gray snow back then. Uh, I said, oh, okay, that's not quite as good, but it's not something else. And then the sounds came back in from the outside, and the temperature of the day came back, and it was over with. It was over with. I think the test pattern, not the test pattern, but the gray snow was still on, and so I shut it off. And left the house with something that, I'll never forget. It was confirmation of myself. I had something. I had somebody watching out for me. That was so wonderful. I couldn't put my hand on it. I did have a name, and I saw him. But I had someone watching my back. There, he was there every time I truly needed him. So that's what I left the house with, and I went down the dirt road and saying Meher Baba, Meher Baba. And with just much more than I'd ever had before on the inside. I had purpose. I was gonna be okay. That was my question a lot. Am I gonna be okay in this world? And from that point on, for some years, I would go out into the woods without the purpose of receiving Baba's help, but just to say his name.
Wow.
As I later learned, I was chanting Baba's name and just repeating his name out in the deep woods, and I did it because it felt great.